What a brilliant way to end the triple header. Hulkenberg working his magic, scoring more points in one race weekend compared to Sauber's entire season in 2024. Mad Max is fully back, and Piastri now builds his lead back up to a 10-point gap, showing everyone he is definitely still the favourite for this title. But with the McLaren boys getting closer and closer on track, it's only a short matter of time till we eventually get some battling between the pair. But coming into the Canadian Grand Prix, there's so much to talk about. This is everything you need to know for the Canadian Grand Prix 2025. So we'll start off with the important news, and important news-wise, there is one big one, and that is the Lance Stroll situation. Now, as I'm speaking to you right now, we still haven't had any confirmation of if he is coming to Canada, who his replacement will be. However, hopefully, I will try to push out this video a little later than I usually do to try and catch the Stroll news, but knowing my luck, it's going to come out as soon as I push out the video. So it has now been confirmed that Lance Stroll will be back for the Canadian Grand Prix. It's not something I thought would actually happen because I don't see the rush for him to come back, especially with it being such a severe injury that's apparently been coming back now. But he will be back in action. I do think it's a bit too quick for him. I don't see the reason why he would rush for this. However, if the doctors have said it's okay and Aston Martin as a team think it's okay, fair enough. But we 100% will actually now be seeing Lance Stroll back in action. Then for other big news in F1, we actually have the F1 calendar for 2026 already released to us. And of course, Imola is gone. It's a shame to see considering we actually had a brilliant Imola in 2025, so very annoying to see it go considering the track we are getting over it, which is another Spanish Grand Prix in Madrid. And yeah, it is a street circuit. Comment down below, how do you feel about all of these street circuits? Because for me, I'm still a fan of the likes of Singapore and Baku, but I think we're getting a bit too many these days. However, then a quick look to the championship standings, and Piastri is leading with 186 to Lando Norris on 176, with now Max Verstappen only on 137, very much falling a little bit too far behind the McLaren pair. So he has a lot of work to do if he wants to get back into this championship. Now, the stats of the Canadian Grand Prix, and we head over to the most wins, and it's two very common names for these sorts of stats. Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton both tied for the most amount of wins here, with 7 to each of their names. Now, of course, Lewis Hamilton is still on the grid, but will he be getting a race win? Absolutely not. He just really doesn't look comfortable in that Ferrari. Again, like I mentioned, in Spain as well. For Hamilton, I think it's still very much trying to push for top 5s, and that's about where his level is at the minute in that Ferrari. If he got anything more than that, he'd be happy, but around 4th to 7th is normally where we see him these days. And then the second most on the grid Canadian wins would be Max Verstappen on 3. And again, this race is very important to him because if he doesn't come at least in the top 2, this championship is falling further and further away from him. Because of the Mad Max in Spain, he only picked up 1 point, meaning he's 49 away from Piastri and 39 away from Norris, being basically 2 DNFs away from your championship rival. It's a little bit worrying, and considering I can't see where Red Bull are going to find this boost of pace, I think if he doesn't get a win or second place in Canada, sadly for Verstappen, that he is not in the championship fight any longer. But then for most pole positions, and again, it is Schumacher and Hamilton with the exact same amount as the number 1s, with 6 to each of their names. But those two are absolutely brilliant. They would be hailed as both the GOATs in the sport, so completely understandable. And overtaking wise, we actually had 48 around the circuit in 2024. So Canada, we know there's going to be quite a few overtakes. I'm excited for that, as there are 3 DRS zones. So 100% not the most overtaking at a circuit, but it's much better than the likes of Imola when you don't have a tyre delta, and Monaco. So Canada should be a great race to watch. Now into the important session information, and it is a normal race weekend. No sprint race weekend shenanigans, like I mentioned. The next one will be in Spa, so keep an eye out for that. But what does that mean? Well, that means FP1 and FP2 on the Friday, FP3 just before the qualifying on the Saturday, and the race as usual on Sunday. And then again, to reiterate, FP1 will be for car setups, FP2 for quali sims, and FP3 for race sims. So pick and choose which ones you want to see. However, my preference to all of this always is if you can only fit in one free practice session, normally FP2 is the one to go for, then it'd probably be FP3, and then FP1 only for the hardcore fans to see more time with the cars on the track. But with that all said and done, let's now head over to your weatherman, Zach GP. Good morning, Montreal, and good morning to all of Canada. This is your weatherman, Zach GP, here for another weather report just ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. And we didn't have any rain affect us in Spain or Monaco or actually Imola, so it's been quite a while since we've seen a rainy race, as Canada does have a history of a lot of rainy races. So will we get lucky with a bit of wet weather this weekend to spruce some things up? Well, sadly no, if that's what you're looking for, as it looks very clear this weekend. So good for anyone who actually is going to the circuit. So on the Friday, it looks like the temperatures are going to be around the high teens. Then on Saturday and Sunday, they go to the low 20s. So we are dropping off from the temperatures we did see in Spain. But again, it's very similar temperatures that we did have around Monaco and Imola. But for the weather report, that is about it. It's a very easy weekend for the forecast. Of course, I'll keep alert and keep you all up to date if there are any updates on the weather, if we do start to see a bit of rain pushing forward. But for now, that is all. So back to you in the studio. Thank you very much, weatherman, and now it is that time in the video where we actually look back to the last Grand Prix weekend, which was in Spain, and I give you my top 5 moments from this Grand Prix. So coming in at number 5, it has to be Fernando Alonso finally getting points, and not only just points at a random race weekend, it was his home Grand Prix. What an absolute brilliant drive it was for him to get into 9th. Now I say absolutely brilliant drive, he did almost cock it up going up into the gravel, but luckily with all of the chaos, he kept strong, was able to eventually get back into the points, getting 10th, and with Verstappen's penalty, he got promoted up to 9th. So hopefully now he's sort of broken the curse, and we can see a little bit more from Alonso points-wise, because he has been looking so good this season after the first few races of the season, and he's just been getting so unlucky with DNF after DNF. Then coming in at number 4, we have Lance Stroll not actually racing in the Spanish Grand Prix. On qualifying, it looked completely fine. Lance Stroll, he had a normal looking qualifying session, nothing crazy, nothing bad. But then there was all these rumours about him having a massive tantrum, basically. However, we don't really know if this is true, as Aston Martin basically come out and said that none of this is true. And of course, to go along with this news, we had Lance Stroll not actually racing because he had issues with his hand. He's had surgery with his hand before, and it's come back to bite him. So the pain was too much. He's had to go get surgery again. And like I mentioned earlier, he could be missing the Canadian Grand Prix as well. But that meant we only had one Aston Martin in the Spanish Grand Prix. Because qualifying had already happened, they couldn't add a replacement. Then coming in at number 3, we have Oscar Piastri winning again. This will now be his 5th Grand Prix win this season so far. He is absolutely dominating it this season. And it's such a shame that he does have those just odd bad race weekends like Australia, and that he just can't get a P2, because if you look at just the race wins, you would expect Oscar Piastri to be miles ahead in the championship. But because of Lando Norris's consistency of getting a few wins plus a lot of P2s, he's still right up there as well. So it's such a great battle to see between the McLaren pairing. Let's hope it gets a little bit spicier very soon. Then coming in at number 2, and Mad Max is back. Mad Max, obviously, after the safety car restart, he got put onto hards when they probably should have just left him on softs in the lead. Almost completely binned it after the last corner going onto the straight, meaning he had a terrible exit. Then Leclerc and Verstappen sort of banged each other about on the straight. Then Russell tried something audacious, pushed Verstappen off the track. Very much George Russell's fault, this part. But for some reason, Red Bull got it completely wrong, asked Verstappen to give back the space. Verstappen wasn't happy and completely just drove into Russell after he'd let him past. It was absolute chaos to see, and we haven't seen this side of Mad Max for a while. It probably have to go back to around Hungary 2024 was the last time I remember him getting this riled up about something. It was incredible to watch. But then finally coming in at number 1, like I have mentioned before, it has to be Hulkenberg's brilliant performance. He came in with a P5 after Verstappen's penalty, so he actually did cross the line with P6. But this meant that he finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari, ahead of Hadjar in the Racing Bulls, which still is definitely a lot better of a car than the Saubers. It was just phenomenal. Right place, right time. Sauber had the best tyres possible. It was just so great to watch Hulkenberg be able to put in a brilliant performance that shows exactly why teams like Sauber need a very consistent, experienced driver like Hulkenberg, who maybe won't get you podiums, but will get you consistent, good results. But anyway, those are my top moments from the Spanish Grand Prix. So now let's head over to the predictions for the Spanish Grand Prix. So the F1 predicts have just dropped for the Canadian Grand Prix. So like usual, I'm going to go through my predictions and show you just where my head is at for the Canadian Grand Prix. And going into question 1, I've gone slap bang normal with Oscar Piastri win with Lando Norris in second. I can't keep putting Lando Norris or Max Verstappen in first and not put Oscar Piastri. But however, with how my predictions have gone so far, maybe that means now Piastri is not going to win. But I've gone with George Russell, which you're going to see a little bit later on in the video exactly why I've done this. But I have faith in Mercedes to return a little bit back to form. Then for pole positions, I do think it's a very similar situation where whoever gets pole position on the Saturday will win the race, and that's why I've gone for Oscar Piastri. Then coming in at question 3 with the Sauber boys, I do think Hulkenberg has got it in the bag. I think he's just got the momentum at the minute. And also, even though Bortoleto has occasionally beat Hulkenberg in qualifying, Hulkenberg's normally very good at qualifying, so it has to be him. Will Aston Martin get into Q2? This is an interesting one because I might change my answer depending on whatever news we get for the replacement driver. I think if Lance is back, I do think they'll be able to get 2 drivers into Q2. However, if we get Drugovich or someone like that, Van Dorn maybe, I don't think they'll be able to get out of Q1. However, again though, if we do get replacement and it's Valtteri Bottas, a little bit weird because maybe they won't run him because of his grid penalty. However, if they do run him, 100% I think he'd be able to get into Q2 or potentially even better. So it's a very weird question that I might be changing, but for now it's definitely a no. Then they haven't let me down much with the fastest pit stop, so I'm sticking with Ferrari. Again, I just think with Oscar Piastri being in the lead, he's going to have the only clean air really available, which means he'll get fastest lap. Another quite easy question for me, Isaac Hadjar over Ocon. Hadjar has been in brilliant form right now. Please do not go to Red Bull and ruin your career. Will there be a safety car? I always go yes, as there's normally at least a virtual safety car no matter what, because at least something goes wrong in the race for someone, which then leads me on to how many classified finishers, and I've gone for 18 again. I really like this. It normally tends to be around 17, 18, 19 finishers. Very rarely get all 20 across the line. Very rarely get less than 16 crossing the line. So 18, slap bang in the middle, seems like the right place to go. And then finally, I will put my 2 times on this. I do think Ferrari will be leading Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship in second place still after Canada. But let's go look at my forfeit prediction. So with F1 predicts out of the way, I think I have to get over to my forfeit prediction. And this race weekend, I've gone for something a little bit different. So go back to Canada 2024 and remember that this was the first race we proper got to see Mercedes back in action. So I have to do something about Mercedes. So for me, I was always going to do George Russell, but I decided a single Mercedes car on the podium. That is my prediction. I think a Mercedes car will be on the podium, and if they are not, I will get egged by someone else or myself, depending on if I can get someone to do it. The amount of places they are away from the podium. So let's say George Russell ends up P4, I get 1 egg to the head. If he ends up P5, Mercedes is the best position P5, 2. If they both come 18th and 19th, I get a full basically dozen or more on me. That's the gist of it. So very excited for this one because it could be absolutely terrible for me, or I could just get 1 egg and it's like, okay, I'm just going to go shower. But anyway, keep an eye on that as I will be keeping you all updated next week after the race, depending on whether or not Mercedes get their first podium since the Miami Grand Prix. So finally, let's head over to the Zach GP analyst whilst he gives a track overview of the circuit.
Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Debuted in 1978, becoming now one of F1's most iconic circuits with 14 turns and the infamous Champions Wall. This time round, we have 70 laps, 3 DRS zones, and plenty of overtaking opportunities to happen. So get excited as we have a brilliant race coming up.
Thank you very much, Bear. And as always, that is the end of the video. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, for any news that does come out after this video, like potentially if the Lance Stroll stuff still hasn't been resolved, or if there's any special liveries, FP1, FP2 drivers coming in that have been announced after this video, I'll have a comment under the video where I edit it each and every time when more news comes out for all of you to see as well. So I try to keep you updated, but if you want to keep yourself updated as well, the F1 website/app is a brilliant place to do this. But that about wraps it up for me. So thank you all so much for watching this video. Like and subscribe if this is the type of content you like to see on this channel. Comment down below what you are excited about for the Canadian Grand Prix, or hey, comment down below what you might not be excited for the Canadian Grand Prix. I'd love to hear both. But anyway, as always, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend for some brilliant racing. After a week off, I'm already racing to go again. And as always, take care, everyone.